guy, you can make a comeback with this shot.
A lot of players that come into this locker room after winning games or losing. We're going to talk about two Hall of Famers that are winners on any team. But it's not just a show about two hockey players. It's about the relationship between these two players and between their families. A relationship which grew out of wearing this team sweater. 3 seasons earlier, they were ready to mothball him. After all, Lanny MacDonald was 34, ancient in hockey years, and he just captained the botched 1986 Stanley Cup assault on the Canadiens at home in the Saddle Dome that later left him weeping in the locker room. But there would be no heartache this night. With a 1-goal grace, MacDonald tore down the right flank of the Forum's ice, unleashed a well-aged wrist shot that maybe was heard, but definitely not seen, by goalie Patrick Roy to confiscate the 1989 Cup for Calgary. An entire province away, in an Orillia, Ontario roadhouse, Darryl Sittler stood mesmerized by the 6th game showdown up on the TV screen. This time the tears were his, tears of delight, stained with envy for a Stanley Cup dream that would never be his. But he couldn't have come closer. In a sport where you're only as good as your last shift, these two players apprenticed as top-drawer rookies on a war-torn club and matured between the blue lines as Hall of Famers and the best of friends during a lifetime that was the game of hockey. Winter in St. Jacobs, Ontario was not so different from Craigmile, Alberta. In both towns, you could hear the sound of airborne rubber slapping against the boards, the gaggle of boys in hand-me-down skates out on homemade rinks, and the radio crackle of the Saturday night game from Maple Leaf Gardens that incubated big league dreams in those little boys' heads. For the young Darryl Sittler, hockey also meant Jean Beliveau and the Montreal Canadiens. Deep in Mennonite country, just outside of Kitchener, Darryl bucked the Maple Leaf trend in his 7-sibling family and eyed the Bleu Blanc Rouge while he was machined by the talent-packed Ontario Minor Hockey League. In 1967, 17-year-old Sittler was snagged 3rd overall by the Junior A London Nationals, soon to be christened the London Knights, who would later retire their star center's number 9, only the 2nd jersey in OHL history to grace the rafters. In his 3rd year, it was clear Sittler would crack the majors. And in the 1970 expansion draft, after 2 passes by his beloved Canadiens, Darryl was plucked from a sea of prospects by Toronto's first swipe. But there was no donning of jerseys, no roar of the flashbulbs, no handshakes or phone calls. Darryl discovered his fate on the radio while building a swimming pool back home in St. Jacobs. And it was that kind of management nonchalance he would soon detest and expect. Lanny MacDonald had a hockey hero of his own, but his was a little closer to home in the Alberta heartland. Lorne MacDonald of the hand-held Bronx dazzled his son with block shots and body checks, and Lanny followed his stride into hockey at the age of 6. A schedule of farm chores sandwiched by hours on the country schoolyard rink groomed Lanny into a quick, tough hockey wonder worthy of MVP status in the Tier 2 Alberta Junior Hockey League as a Lethbridge Sugar King, the same year Sittler debuted with the Leafs. MacDonald graduated to the Medicine Hat Tigers of the Western Canada Hockey League, where he lined up on right wing alongside Tom Lysiak and Derek Kuntz with stingy results, a trend that would later dog Lanny's career. 2 days before the '73 NHL draft, Lanny and the champs from the West sashayed into the Memorial Cup tournament, antsy to steal the country's minor league crown, but instead wilted under the media heat and the Quebec Ramparts offense. But that didn't dent MacDonald's market value. At a time when the WHA was gutting the National Hockey League of its talent with the help of beefy payrolls, the 22-year-old farm boy from Craigmile stuck to what he knew best and became the highest-paid Maple Leafs rookie. This got to bring back some memories for the both of you, huh?
A lot of memories. I played most of my career here in Toronto. The room's changed a lot since Lanny and I played here, for the better. But
We had some good times here. We shared a lot of great memories, and I think that's what holds things so dear to your heart is the good times you share together. You never think about the bad things or the challenging times. It's a great room, has a great tradition, and hopefully that'll be there forever.
Well, when you started, you were on different lines. Lanny was coming in at a contract probably that a lot of people were envious of because of the WHA.
He was making more money than all of us.
And then the WHA's Toronto Toros came courting Sittler, but he wasn't about to budge from the National Hockey League. A tanned and beaming Harold Ballard signed Sittler to a 5-year, $850,000 deal with the now notorious no-trade clause. MacDonald jumped on board Toronto with a healthy contract of his own. But while Sittler lived up to his end of the bargain with a 38-goal, 84-point season in 1973-74, which helped earn him his captain's stripes the following season, the new high-priced whiz kid coughed up only 14 goals. Demoted to the fourth-line Black Aces, whispers of a trade to Atlanta surfaced, and then was silenced when Lanny snapped out of his scoring funk and capped the 75-76 schedule with 37 goals, more than his first 2 seasons combined. And maybe the best of all, he now lined up to the right of Darryl Sittler. You guys are great friends. I mean, that's legendary in sports history and in hockey history. Didn't start off that way. You played together for a while and you weren't that close.
Well, I came in 70, Lanny came in, I think, 73, and we have one of those friendships, I think, that even though we're miles apart where we live, and sometimes we don't see or talk to each other for a while, when we get back together, it's just like, time never passed.
I remember a story about your first child, all right? And Lanny's got a first child. He's at home. He's gone to bed. The mother-in-law is there. And you and Wendy decide you're going to help things along. Huh?
Well,
Tell me.
Lanny was to join us for dinner that night, and he couldn't make it, so we thought we'd bring him a lobster back to the house, and
What kind of
a live lobster.
Live lobster.
They had lobster races on our kitchen floor at like 2 o'clock in the morning, celebrating the arrival of this baby. It was fun to have friends, but hold it, we can only take this friendship so far.
And Ardell was coming home the next morning, so he wanted to make sure he had the house clean and
It was great.
and
Who won the
deodorized.
races? Who won the races?
Well, it wasn't him because I was trying to boot him out the door with the lobster.
Lanny shows up here in the locker room, and as you say, Lanny's one of the nicest guys in the world, but he also has a boiling point that happens quick. He starts showing pictures about his brand new
Huh? That's our, Patty Boutet was a real character, and what we call him, Silver Tongue, eh?
That's right.
And
he was.
Lanny, he was at the hospital. Ardell delivered their first baby. We were out in the ice practicing, came in after the practice, and Lanny's here in the street clothes, and he's got the new pictures, beautiful pictures of his baby. Then he's proud, and he's showing everybody, and Booter picks it up and looks at, what do you say? I don't know if we should repeat it on the air or not.
It's a comment that can't be repeated, but
Let's see that little sleaze something, eh?
Yeah.
And
We're getting the picture.
Lanny lost it.
Yeah.
I lost my temper just once or twice in here, and Booter seemed to bring out the worst in me all the time. But that's one of those things that happen in a dressing room that you can have a few laughs over after.
That's right, after it's over.
That's
yeah,
right.
But I mean, Darryl mentions in his book, he says, Lanny decided to let him live for another week or
another
something.
day, yeah.
Yeah, another day or another week. Errol Thompson and Lanny MacDonald are excellent wingers, Ballard told the press. Now, if we could only find them a center. That was February 6th, 1976. One day before Darryl Sittler made hockey history. The victim was the division-leading Boston Bruins, and the fall guy was rookie goalie Dave Reese, whose NHL career plans were sparked, then dashed in those 60 minutes of hockey. It seemed every time Sittler's stick touched the puck, it was a point in the bank. After the second intermission, he had racked up a record 7 points, including a hat trick in the Leafs' 8-4 lead. And after only 44 seconds into the third, he punished Reese with his fourth goal to join Maurice Richard and Bert Olmsted as the only men in history wielding an 8-point game. But the final period had just begun. Sittler was good for 2 more goals, a record second hat trick in consecutive periods, and a proud owner of the league's only 10-point game to this day.
Yeah, well, I played with Darryl that night, and I've never been able to figure this out. Howie Meeker's trying to figure this out for me right now, is how could I play with a guy who got 10 points in one night and I was a minus? I was minus that night. I played with a guy who got 10 points. I still have never figured that one out. I mean, that should be a record in itself, you know.
1976 held yet another high water mark for hockey. The inaugural Canada Cup tournament pitted the Canadian hockey elite against international powers for world hockey domination. And camped behind the legendary Bobbies, Orrin Hull, Phil Esposito, Guy Lafleur, and Bob Gainey were the only 2 Maple Leaf applicants.
How about the Canada Cup? What was it like? Now, I mean, you mentioned that was where you got real close together and you spent a lot of time together.
Well, I think, first of all, to be named to that team, and there was about 30 players named, and I think only 23 or 24 could actually be on the team. And to be named to try out for that team in the first place was a tremendous honor. And when we got there, we had kind of made a pact between ourselves that we were going to do everything possible to make that final roster. And when you work hard together towards something and keep each other going all the time, it makes it that much easier. And it wasn't only the bond that Darryl and I shared. Our families share the same bond. His 3 kids, my 4 kids, and Wendy and Ardell are great friends. And when you go through things like that, with family involved, that bond becomes closer all the time, and the Canada Cup kind of solidified everything that we did together.
One thing about the Canada Cup, and Lanny talking about the willingness for us to make the team, there were guys, there were stars in all their teams, you know, 50-goal scorers. You got the Richard Martins, Espositos, the Orrs, and everybody, you know. We're Lanny and Darryl coming from Toronto, and yeah, they thought enough of us to try out, but our attitude was to go to practice and make it like it was the 7th game of a Stanley Cup every practice. And Lanny hit Serge Savard, who was, you know, a mainstay, played in All-Star games and everything, and knocked him out of play, hit him in the leg, but not because he wanted to hurt Serge. He was just very competitive, and he took a little flack from the media for that, but that just shows you the intensity that we tried to have when we were there. And I think guys like Scotty Bowman, the coaches, liked that and gave us an opportunity to play because of it.
Under head coach Scotty Bowman, Canada steamrolled through the tournament, bowing only to the burly Czech squad, whom they later faced in the best-of-3 final. The first game was a 6-0 cakewalk for Canada. But in Game 2 at the Montreal Forum, the Czechs would not make it so easy. The score seesawed to an even 4 goals apiece when regulation time drained out. What happened next, at 11 minutes into overtime, had Ballard secretaries manning the switchboard with the greeting, Maple Leaf Gardens, home of Darryl Sittler. And it all started with Don Cherry and his now infamous coaching call.
So I get down and I said, now look guys, here's what you got to do. You have to, when you let on, you're putting your head down and you're coming down, he'll come right out, hesitate for a little while, and slide it home. So, you know, I told him that anyhow. I think Lanny got the puck, put it to Dion, I'm not sure. It goes over to Sittler, he's coming down. He gives it the old fake. Drazilla comes out and he slides it in. I looked at McNeil, I'm more surprised than anybody in the world. I mean, it was like picture perfect.
In 1977, Leafs coach Red Kelly was bumped for Roger Nielsen, a cutting-edge coach and innovator who boosted Toronto's season total to 92 points, the highest in a generation. Sittler was no slouch either, with 45 goals and 72 assists, nipping at the heels of Lafleur and Brian Trottier in the scoring race.
When I coached the Leafs, Darryl was the captain. That was my first NHL team, so he was undoubtedly the best captain I ever had. He worked hard every practice. The players responded to everything he said. I could go to him with anything, and for me, having a captain like that in my first year was really great.
The Leafs disposed of L.A. and then dumped the favored Islanders, courtesy of a 7th-game overtime goal by MacDonald, only to expire in 4 straight to the Habs in the semifinals. Although Nielsen was a breath of fresh air, the Leafs stagnated at .500 hockey near the end of the 78-79 season. Ballard moved ex-Leaf coach Punch Imlach into the GM's office, and he promptly threatened to sweep the Gardens clean. Scrounging for a loophole in Sittler's no-trade contract and coming up empty, Imlach was hungry to barter Sittler. And on December 28, 1979, he hit on the next best thing.
The other big event that I remember about Lanny is, and I believe, I could be wrong, but I know it was the first week in December, and in my mind it's December 7th, I could be wrong on that date, was when he got traded. You know, how many hundreds and hundreds of players have got traded? How many hundreds of guys got traded, and, you know, 5 times myself? We wrecked the whole room in Toronto. It was the most emotional thing of a player ever being traded.
Darryl, what happens now? They trade Lanny, and you don't think it's fair, and you don't think it's fair personally, or you don't think it's a good idea technically for the team?
Well, number one, Lanny was my best friend at the time, and we played together, my line mate.
At the time?
Well, and still is. And, I mean, with Lanny gone, it's really feeling a part of myself leaving. And then the other thing was I was going through a lot of conflict, I guess, with Punch and Harold at the time, and there was some feeling that maybe it was a way to get back at Darryl Sittler because I had no trade contract, and trading his best friend and his line mate might be the way. I don't know if that's the case or not. I think they thought getting Wolf Payman and Pat Hickey might help, but I knew as a player the character of the person we were trading, not just the hockey player, and to me that was the important loss of the organization, losing someone of Lanny's character.
That's nice of you to say,
yeah,
Sid.
Yeah.
I'll send you 2 Christmas cards.
No, but
and I think the fans, the people felt that. Like Lanny was, he was a part of this community, and he gave a lot more than just the goals on the ice.
The MacDonald trade to Colorado was the beginning of the end for Imlach and for Sittler. While Darryl was busy dissecting his Captain C from his jersey in protest, picketers swarmed the Garden chanting, "Bad Punch spoils a party," and kicked Punch's fanny for trading Lanny. Meanwhile, Imlach was still trying to peddle Sittler to every port in the league, but Darryl was bent on staying put and playing well. He bobbed in and out of slumps, but was reeling in his 1,000th point. With the final year of his contract rounding the bend, Ballard was sluggish to renew him for more money, so Sittler decided to recycle himself elsewhere.
It's not a healthy situation, I don't think, for a player or for the team or the players around the team, and hopefully the Leafs can clear it up. The sooner the better, I think, for everybody.
On January 20th, 1982, a 4-year, $1 million deal sent Sittler packing to Philadelphia, where he landed his 400th goal.
Kenny Linsman to the blue line to Barber. Barber's shot hit Pearson. The rebound. Sittler scores. Darryl Sittler on a power play.
best thing you remember about Harold Ballard?
Well, I'll tell you what, Harold was probably the biggest fan that the Maple Leafs ever had. And Harold believed that good press, bad press, as long as his team had the front page, that's all that mattered. It was always fun to have Harold and King on the road trips with us because they were like two little kids. They were like so full of vim and vigor, and you know, at 6 o'clock in the morning they're up going for a walk, checking things out, but they always had a big grin from ear to ear as long as we were playing well. If we didn't play well, they were upset, and you know, it showed. But to see the enthusiasm at their age, hey, I hope I have that much energy.
Well,
Something nice.
As much as there's this mystique out there that Darryl Sittler and Harold Ballard had this confrontation or whatever, I have a lot of respect for Harold Ballard, and I have a lot more warm memories about Harold Ballard than I do bad memories.
How about the downside with Harold Ballard? The worst thing that Harold ever did that you're aware of?
Well, I think if
hiring
I can...
Punch Imlach.
Is that?
In 1984, while Lanny was setting up shop with the Flames, whom he would pilot to 2 Stanley Cup finals later that decade, the Flyers secretly went shopping. On a day Sittler was to be inducted as captain, the club cashed him in at the Red Wings front office. Devastated and nagged by injuries, Sittler squeezed out only 11 goals in 61 games before the 1985 playoffs. The following season, his shelf life in Detroit had expired. After almost 15 seasons on professional ice, Darryl Sittler quietly pulled himself out of the game. No flashbulbs, no flowers, no fanfare, leaving it just the way he walked in. Ironically, it was Lanny's career, not Darryl's, that had the happy Jean Beliveau-like ending. After the 1986 Stanley Cup letdown, MacDonald resisted the urge to shuck the sport and hung around long enough to snap the 500-goal mark, as well as a second but successful kick at the cup.
When I won the cup, a lot of people said, weren't you excited? It was a more peaceful feeling than anything. And my thoughts were about guys like Darryl, who we had shared so many good times together, and I wish he was there with me at the time. That was I guess the sad part about it is the people that you go to war with and you know that are going to be there day in, day out, sometimes don't get to share at the end of it.
At the same time, I can remember the exact game and moment they won the cup. I was in Aurelia with some guys, and I was by myself kind of watching the TV, and a tear came to my eye when I saw, because I could sense the emotion and the feeling. I know the commitment it takes to get to there, and then when you finally win it, it doesn't happen very often. And I say that if you weren't a Calgary Flames fan in that series, you certainly were a Lanny MacDonald fan for the years, the trouble he went through here in Toronto, Colorado, getting there, the career he's had, what he's done for Special Olympics in the community. For him to be a part of the Stanley Cup, to me it was a storybook ending for a great guy.
You don't want hockey to end before you're ready, Lanny once said, and sometimes you wish it never would. But sooner or later, time benches us all. One day, without warning, the cheers that once pierced the arena air for their every move will somehow dim and die. But there is one thing the sport of hockey brought Lanny MacDonald and Darryl Sittler that will never tarnish with time, and that's each other.
One more time for the people that are watching, the fans. Let's get a Darryl to Lanny and a goal. Come on, here we go. Right here, Maple Leaf guns.
Okay, Sid, I'll put his rebound in.
Huh? All right, then.
Don't mess up this pass.
Okay, now. Let's watch
Okay,
this.
Mackie.
Here, let me carry the puck.
Yeah,
I never did carry it. Oh, no! Get it back! Get it back! He snaps it! Yeah!
I'll pick the puck up for you.
Thanks, Sid. Perfect.
Might be your last.
Might be our last.
Across North America or halfway around the world, with 3 classes of in-flight service, Air Canada goes above and beyond to serve you better.